Well, my internet train friends, I figure it's time to do a layout overview, and I want to first start by thanking all of the new subscribers that have checked out the channel, who are commenting on the videos, and I'm glad that you're able to enjoy the hobby as much as I do. Again, this is meant to be a lot of fun. We have a lot of fun on this channel. I love running these trains. I love doing these videos. So today we're going to do a layout overview. I'm going to walk through the different areas of the layout. We're going to talk a little bit about how things were designed, where things are, and I hope you enjoy it. Let's get right into it. From a general materials perspective, I used Lionel Fast Track, and you'll see that when I first designed this layout, it was on my floor in my basement. I decided to go for Fast Track because it was durable and it worked well on the floor. And then what ended up happening was I designed this layout and added switches and added all the features you see here and mocked it up on the entire floor. So when it came time to build this table, I really thought for a while. I said, Chris, do you go back and buy a bunch of raw switches and road bed and go at it that way like Dad did? And I ended up saying, no, I'm gonna take my Fast Track and put it on the table. When you look at the layout from a plan view, it's essentially one large loop, but I wanted to give the illusion that the trains were going from place to place. So I divided the layout into three main sections. The first section I call the Bailey Township, named after a very important person in my life. Hint, hint, one of my daughters. The trains pass from the Bailey Township around the bend through two mountains that I've created, and then they go through what I call the Clare Rail Yard. Again, a very important feature on the layout because I don't have a lot of shelves, and I wanted the ability to store trains on the layout, but also have a lot of operating options. And we'll talk a little bit about how that yard is designed and how I'm able to move different trains from track to track, and how I'm able to turn things around on the layout without having to pick things up and flip them around. As we move through the rail yard, we enter Addison, which is the more industrial area of the layout. I say that lightly. There's not a lot of things packed into this section of the layout, but I really love how it turned out. I wanted my layout to have more of an open feel, like the trains were really long and really going somewhere. And I feel like I captured that as best as I could in this space. Addison has the door factory, so it has more of an industrial feel there. It also has a dry goods building. It has the engine shed. It has two bridges that support one of my post-war elevated loops. And then to keep the country vibe going, I included the country store, which is a great feature. For the elevated loops, again, there's an elevated loop over the town of Addison, and there's also an elevated loop that goes from the Bailey Township around to the end of the Clare Rail Yard. That one is a little bit longer, and that one is set up for both conventional and command control, so I can run a bit longer trains up there when I want to. And that also features a couple of bridges. One of the elements I really like about that elevated line is I have a double track bridge. The train comes around, it does a very basic loop, turns around and goes back through the same bridge. But it gives a really nice effect, especially when you're looking at it from different areas of the layout. Because at one point the train will be moving one direction and then it comes back the opposite direction. Again, the goal being to do as much as I could with as little as I could. As we focus on the town of Bailey, there's a couple of things in this area. This has the more detailed Main Street. I wanted to give this sort of an old school Main Street vibe, and I think we pulled that off. There's a road that kind of simulates coming in from the countryside, crosses over the tracks, and then you come in around this corner building, which is the Woodland Scenic Davenport building. The road then wraps around and it proceeds to disappear into the yards behind the town. I like the details of these buildings. I picked these out because I'm not really good at scratch building, so I wanted as much detail as I could get without really having to do a whole lot on my own. So these buildings pull that off for me. If we move across the Bailey Township, we get to the post office. I wanted sort of an area where you feel a transition, like you're leaving the town and you're getting a bit more rural as you get towards the bridge. Because the bridge, again, is another feature in and of itself, and it kind of separates the town from the more rural, more mountainous area of the layout. But as we make that transition, there's a feature in the back of the layout. It's something we don't see a whole lot when I do run sessions because it's kind of hard to get video of, but it's this passenger station. Passenger station is really special. This was originally on Dad's layout before we did the rebuild. And based on the space, when we built Dad's train yard, we had to take it off. I was able to bring it to my house and incorporate it into the layout, and I think it's a great piece. Behind the town, I have a couple of other sidings. Again, light industry. I have this little dairy building, and this is more to park trains. Again, being able to side off some engines. This track is connected to the inner main line, and these are 036 manual switches. I'm able to reach everything on this layout with my hands, so I didn't opt for the command switches here. I typically will switch them by hand. As we move under the bridge, I added some realistic water and a couple of different water areas. The water, for the most part, looks like it's collecting. Not really what I was going for, but I'm kind of a novice at doing water, so it turned out well enough for me. So I added some of these canoers. These canoers really bring a little bit of life and make it look a little bit more recreational, whereas as you get more underneath the bridge, it looks more like just like a muddy, shallow mess of, nasty water. But it's okay. It worked out. I still think it's really cool how when the trains pass by, the lights glisten off of it, and it really gives that reflective look like it is prototypical water. So again, worked out better than I thought. If I could do it again, I've learned from my mistakes. As we get to the other side of the bridge, there is a retaining wall. This is actually some really neat paper material that's textured. So it gives that look of real stone, even though it's not. But it turned out really well. I decorated it with a couple of different scenic pieces to blend it into the background a little bit more. I was really happy with how it came out. Looks really slick. And right above it is that cabin area. Now this cabin, I've had a lot of people give me credit for scratch building this cabin. This is an old Ertl piece from when I was a kid. So one of those Ertl farm sets. If you remember those, that's what this is. It's really great because I played with it as a kid and now it sits on my train layout. And it looks really cool. And I used the Woodland Scenic static grass around this. First time using static grass. I love that stuff. It worked out really well. It was very easy for me to use. And yes, it makes a huge mess. So if you're going to do it, just be ready. It makes the biggest mess ever. And it was a giant pain to clean up. As the tracks move away from the cabin, we hit some trestles and then we move through a small bridge and then behind another mountain. We call this the Big Rock Candy Mountain. This one I made on my kitchen floor and I relocated to the layout. It turned out pretty well. I like how the trains can move in and out of it. Gives that illusion of a tunnel. As we move into the rail yard, this is where things start to get a little bit more interesting. The rail yard is comprised of a number of 072 switches on both ends. And on the south end, which is the end right by the Candy Mountain, I have the ability to cross the train from one track to the next. And on the south end, I have the ability to bring the train in, hit a crossover, and then change direction on the main line. This allows me to turn around any train, including my larger articulated engines, so I don't have to pick them up and turn them around. And then you'll see I'm able to park the trains at a number of different tracks. So I have 3 main yard tracks. I can park pretty long trains in these tracks. They run the majority of the distance of the table. On the north end of the yard, you'll see that we have the same 072 switches and some options to get out of the yard. So this area allows me to pass out of the yard and travel next to the engine shed to get back out to the main line. From the main line, I do have one area where I can transfer from the outer main line to the inner main line, and that's right over here in this section. This is a set of 072 switches, so again, I can move any sized engine into that area, and then you'll see I do have another 072 switch, which is my reversing loop switch. The reason I used 072 here as well is because I want to be able to park larger engines on the inner main yard in Addison. So I can take any engine and put it in there if I needed to. On the north end of the layout, I have an engine yard. This is essentially just a spur off of the main line, 072, and it allows me to park 3 to 4 engines in this yard area. So I like this area because I have an engine shed here, so I can put some of my engines in the shed, keep some of the dust off, which is a perk. It also looks pretty cool. Some of the scenic features in the town of Addison include a small cow pasture under the bridge. This is actually a Christmas bridge, and yes, I leave the Christmas lights on all the time. It's just something fun. It is, it's colorful. It adds a lot of joy to this end of the layout, and I like to run these lights. And behind the cow pasture, you'll see a little shack with some hobos hanging out in it. I've been watching a lot of those YouTube hobo videos, and I love them. So I had to put that on the layout. I had to make sure I did an homage to those folks. Now we have the door factory. So this is more of just a industrial area where I can bring in box cars, and they kind of look more prototypical sitting there. I have another siding where I can park extra train cars or an engine, and then I have the country store around the corner. I tried to make this look a little bit more rustic, add a little bit of color, brighten up this area of the layout to kind of bring a balance to both ends. Again, you have the north end, which has the town of Addison, and then on the south end, you have the town of Bailey. So making sure that I brought some synergy and some cohesion between both of those sections of the layout. When I first got done this layout, I never planned to put these elevated lines on here, but I realized I had a lot of table space and really wanted to add something a little bit more interesting to the end of the layout. We had a new challenge, and that was, let's build a feature on the north end of the layout that allows an elevated line, but also allows the trains below to pass underneath. I tried to do it with trestles originally, and it was an epic failure. So we built this wooden tunnel, and I decorated it with scenery so that it blends in. But you'll see that the tunnel portal is actually laser etched wood. It was just something fun we did. I'm leaving it that way because I think it looks kind of neat, and it gives it a unique look. It's not scale, it's not, it's just kind of different. But the trains are then able to disappear and come out at the north end of the rail yard. And it's really cool because then it allows me to run trains above without having to worry about trestles or track sagging or anything like that. And it turned out to look really cool. It allowed me to kind of separate some of these areas visually and made the layout a little bit more interesting. Again, guys, thank you so much to all my subscribers and to everyone who's checking out the channel. I really appreciate it, and I hope you enjoyed this layout overview. I'll probably do another video just about power and control. I'm also going to do a video about how the table was built, but that's going to take a little bit more time. Our next video is going to be about this beauty. This is a Lionel Legacy Black Bonnet, and we're going to do a run session on this. That'll be my next video coming up soon. So I hope everyone has a great week. Have a great night. Thanks so much for checking it out, and we'll see you next time.